All right, this is the, hopefully you can see it now. This is, today I plan on just going over probably about half-ish of chapter 13. Since I changed the presentations, I used to have this scheduled for the end of the semester to mainly do like the presentations in class and then spend time, I may have mentioned this, I don't know, and then spend time in class doing the rest of the chapter. So now that I do the presentations where they just turn them in, they're not actually doing them in class time. I have a lot more time in these last couple of weeks because I just have you turn them in, which actually any preference, those of you who've done it, any preference you like doing them, not standing up here doing it, presenting? It's better to record them, right? It's a little easier and not as, maybe not as stressful. I think in general, that's the case. And I think, remember, as a reminder too, on that anybody here groups 3 and 4? You guys are group 3, 4? No. Group 3. Groups 1 and 2. I can't remember if it was this class or my other section. One of the videos, YouTube. There was a nasty gram from YouTube saying they took it down for. I don't know what the reasons were. I think it was because it was said something about proprietary information was used or something. So it was taken down and blocked. So I sent a message to them. That was last week. I haven't looked again. So if somebody from group 1 or 2, hopefully that's been resolved. And we can actually see the video. I don't know if it was this one or the other section, but make sure you check for that. I kind of like to know what they flagged it for. It's always kind of an interesting kind of thing, but nonetheless. So that's what I plan on going over chapter 13 today. Chapter 13 is acquiring information systems or buying them. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on, the final in this class, this one, and I'm going to double check. I've already looked a couple times. I'm pretty sure I think I mentioned this. The final for this class is actually on Thursday at this time at 9 o'clock. Thursday, I think Thursday's the 14th. Does that sound about right? December 14th, which would be 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tomorrow. 2 weeks from Thursday. Excuse me. Right? Sound about right? And you guys are like, me too. I'll look it up, verify it, and then I'll put it in an announcement. Yeah.
Is it in person or on?
It's going to be in person as well. Yeah, same format as last time, as the last 2 midterms. And my other class, my 10:30 class, is actually on Tuesday. I've had a couple students in my Thursday, my later class, asked to take it on Thursday instead. So if you guys want to swap, let me know. Hopefully not everybody. Hopefully you don't get I got half of one of those classes in the other one. So I got all these people there. I can do it. It just I just have to. What I have to do is go in and open it up for you in the other section. Not a big deal. So just let me know if you're interested in doing that. I think there's anything else, any other questions, any more administration kind of things I need to ramble about. All right, so we're getting down towards the end of the semester, my favorite time. I don't know about you, but I'm ready. I'm ready to be done. Everybody have a good Halloween, good Thanksgiving, hopefully. All right, so let's jump into the chapter. And like I said, chapter 13, acquiring information systems. Acquiring information systems meaning how we buy them. A lot of times, and it's mostly on the applications kind of stuff. A lot of organizations, sometimes you're moving along and you need to buy. You discover, there's a program that we can use to help us do this. And so you have to go out and buy it. And what we're going to do is talk about what are the different ways or what are the different things you think about from a management perspective on how do you buy them or what kinds of things, what ways can you buy them? And then we're going to talk at the end of the chapter is more on development, how you build them. If you decide to build it yourself, what are the different software development methodologies used? The book still heavily relies, those of you who've had any kind of classes or any kind of training or any kind of actually hands-on work, they lay heavily on what we call the software development life cycle or the SDLC. It's the old waterfall approach, which that's where my history. I started out as a developer. This is the stuff I did. I was writing software. I was a software engineer at first. Programmer initially, and then I became an engineer and doing more design work and analysis kind of stuff. So I'm very familiar with this stuff. This is where I grew up, where I cut my teeth, as they say. All right, so I'm gonna jump in a little bit. I like to show this chart first. I don't know how well you can see this. This is not in the book. This is a chart I stole from somewhere else. I don't even remember my reference anymore. Do I even have a reference on this? I don't know if I have a reference in my notes. Probably should, because I know I stole it from somewhere else. Oh, I do. It's a website. If you want to know, I do have a reference. But this is when you're doing a project, what's interesting, and I use this in my project management classes too, which I did a lot of project management in my career. A lot of times when we're building or buying software, there's different people, different players that are involved in it. And one of the reasons I like to go over this, it's good from a management perspective to understand all these different perspectives, because things are gonna go weird and you're gonna like, why did they think that? But this is why. So that first block here, I'm gonna go top left and pretty normal. The first block up there is how the customer explained it. So I'm an analyst, and I go talk to this customer, and they're saying they want me to build something for them. So part of the process of building something for people is you go and you ask lots and lots of questions. What is it you want? And you try to get the customer to explain it to you. And the top left one is how the customer explained it. And how the customer explains it, most of the time the customer, they don't understand, in many cases, technology or IT or what you're building. And so they'll tell you all kinds of stuff, and you have to kind of figure out what it is they want. So the top left is how they explained it. And then the second one is the second block is how the project leader understood it. So then you have an analyst doing all this, and then you give it to your project leader or a project manager. And the project manager kind of, oh, okay, this is the way I understand it to be. And you can see, of course, it's a tree, the swing's gonna hit the tree pretty bad. And then the next one is then the analyst. The analyst says, oh, okay, I gotta design this thing now. And the analyst realizes, hey, I can't, it's gonna hit the tree. So I'm gonna build it, they start doing things like cutting the tree out. So the analyst is trying to, well, that's what they said. That's what my project manager, my team leader said. So I gotta build this so it'll work. So that's the analyst, and then how the programmer wrote it. The programmer says, well, that's not going to work. I'm just going to write it like this. So they just write it kind of differently, obviously, because usually the documentation from the analyst probably wasn't all that good and kind of difficult to read. And then we're getting to some of the other, kind of the ones I like, and I've seen lots of this. That far right, top right, it says what's it say? How the sales executive describe it, or the marketing types. Hopefully there's no marketing people in here. I don't want to offend you, but nonetheless, this is very true. The marketing, I've had to go out and with marketing people before, and sometimes, see how the marketing person, they go, oh, it's a nice cushy seat, they always, in my opinion, they always oversell it. I was just kind of a little side to that. When I was working at the small company Optimus, we were trying to sell a proton accelerator to a University of Florida in Gainesville. And we were getting closer and closer to the sale. So they said, okay, I was the head of project management for them. And they said, all right, we want you to start going on some of the, on these trips with us to talk to them, go with the marketing folks to start transitioning into engineering. So my job was to go and I just sit there and listen to what they're saying. And it was exactly this, man. The salespeople, our sales guy was like telling, oh yeah, the accelerator will do this, and you can treat this and do this. I'm like, I don't think we can do that. This guy's selling them something. I was getting nervous, and I went and actually talked to our VP of engineering, saying, hey man, he's overselling us. That's all right. We'll figure that out later. I'm like, I have to lead this project that you're doing that. Anyways, that does happen. They oversell it to their customers. Then now I'm on the bottom left column, how it's documented. If you've ever done any development, any coding, any writing, design, any kind of that stuff, everybody hates to write the documentation. The documentation tells has all the code, it helps you explain why, what, where, and nobody likes doing it. It's always I'll do that later, and it never gets done, or often never gets done. So then the next one is what operations installed. So you had all these bad things. And so they installed it looks like it's just a rope hanging down. So that's what actually got built. The next one is how the customer was billed, or at least the perspective of how the customer thinks, man, I just wanted a little swing thing. That's what I kind of explained. And I got they're charging me and it's really expensive. I'm getting a roller coaster or something, that's what that next one is. And then the next one is how help desk supported it. Well, we'll help you up to this point, but after that, you're on your own kind of thing. And then the last one on the far right is how what they actually really needed, or what was the need for and it was they just need a tire swing would have been good enough. I like this because it gives you the idea, if you're a manager, you're in the position of, okay, we're going to buy some software. We're going to have somebody develop some software. These are certainly exaggerations of that, but you need to understand that. That's the way, when somebody starts coming in, they come and start asking you questions about what is it you need. It's really difficult, and you need to really try to do the best to get people who can explain it, what your needs are, the best to whoever the analyst or whoever the person is that's interviewing them. And all these things happen, and they're all important. So you need to make, it's just good to have an understanding of what all these things, or all those different perspectives of the people that are involved, what their perspectives are. All right, so let's move back into the book stuff. I think. The next thing, the information systems planning process, figure right out of the book. This is how you should be doing, looking at how you're going to structure whatever, your information systems planning, how you're going to plan for IT. At the very top, you'll see those top two blocks anyway. And in a perfect world, or the way it should be done is you have somebody, the organization defines and says up at the very top, what its mission is, what is it they're trying to achieve, what are you doing, and then they have some kind of a business assessment. A lot of times it's their, and I don't know if these are done too much anymore. Back in the early 2000s, everybody was really big on mission and vision statements. Do they still do those at all? Anybody work in an organization, or do they do that in classes anymore? There for a while, that was a big thing. You have to have a mission and vision statement. Anybody have them on their wall, on the wall at their work? That was the big thing. You had to define it. And then what you would do is you go down through the organization, and each part of the organization, my part, as the IT manager, I had to get my team together and say, okay, let's develop a mission statement of what is our mission. And it was usually something, it was not very, kind of short, kind of flowery though. Our mission is to provide the best tech IT, so that our customers are always can do their job the most efficiently and effectively. Very flowery, kind of wording. And then the vision statement was usually how you are going to accomplish that. We are going to meet our mission by doing these kinds of things. Very typical in an organization. And then your organization would have a strategic plan. This is how we're going to go about what we're going to do. And then you have these other things there, what your current technology is. The really takeaway from this chart, and the thing is, I think I've mentioned it several times. In an organization, one of the things that's very important is to have that upper vision and what's the organizational mission, what's the organizational vision. And that was always, as the IT manager, one of my primary jobs, understand what it is where the company is going, what the people that I report to, what are the important people, the three letters, the CEO, the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, which sometimes is the same as their lead IT person. Your CFO, Chief Financial Officer. I'm trying to remember all the three letter that you see, all the important people on Mahogany Row kind of stuff. But that was my job, understand where they're going, what they want, so that I can make sure everything I do. And that's why, as you get down in the IT part of it, my job is to develop stuff in alignment with their stuff. And that's what this chart is showing. All right, so now move more specifically into the IT part of it. So as part of that, the IT planning. So we have so we had the organizational strategic plan. Once again, that was what the organization is going to do. But then now I'm gonna fall down, I'll just jump into the IT architecture. The IT architecture is the ways that we're gonna do it, and a lot of time it's looking at the physical kind of things. And in some ways, like in the sheriff's department, it was already preset. When I got there, the sheriff's obviously been, operating for millions a year, well, several years now, I don't know, millions, but at least I don't know, with IT, they've probably been 30 years-ish. So I came along and they already had an IT architecture, but my job as the IT manager, I had to review it. And that's looking at, okay, where do we have servers here. We have all these places, all these different places. What's the physical layout of it first? And then how do I meet the needs? What are the applications that need to run and all those things? So I needed to know, okay, we have four primary jails. Where are the jails located? Where are all the stations located at? And does it make sense? Do I put a data center at each one of those? Do I put a data center centrally located? What is the architecture? What makes best sense to meet the needs of the organization? And in some cases that, and there was a couple things we actually did. We did make some changes. When I first came in, we had a lot of stuff running remote that they were just old and it was redundant equipment, and we brought it in, we centralized some of it. I'm not, you'll get people that are very religious about, do we bring all of our stuff and centralize it, or do we decentralize it and move it out? It depends on what your architecture is, how your throughput is, your network systems work, and how fast you need things to run at certain places. There is no easy answer to that. Some people in academia will tell you, oh, never centralized, always decentralized. Well, it makes sense based on whatever your dynamics of your organization are, or run everything in the cloud. Well, that works everything works in the cloud fine, except if you have very sensitive stuff and it's very expensive and they don't have the right protections. There's all kinds of things to consider on what your architecture is going to look like. You got to make sure it meets the needs of the organization first and foremost. So then the next thing is the IT strategic plan. The strategic plan, once again, looking at the organizational strategic plan. Where's the organization going, and how do I fit into that? What do I do to meet their needs? Interesting. When I first started at the sheriff's department, we had our prior sheriff. It was John McMahon at the time. John McMahon, probably a little more old school, kind of not. I wouldn't say he wasn't anti-technology, but he wasn't very progressive IT or technology kind of guy. So a lot of this stuff, he was like, very, very conservative as far as let's not spend money on that, because we need, you ever heard the expression, we need more boots on the ground. We need more deputies. We just need more people. I'm like, excuse me, sir, but if I could do a lot of stuff with technology, so you need fewer people because all this stuff, we're automating things and making it easier for them to do their job. Not that he just didn't have the vision. He wasn't a bad guy. He didn't have the exposure and vision. He retired. Now the current Shannon Dykus, very different kind of mindset, kind of as he's more progressive. He actually, before I was there, he was the officer. He was the captain over technology. So he's a lot more progressive. And so he comes in and he's making a lot of changes and starting to add a lot of stuff. He was only there like a year when I was there, so it was kind of hard. It's kind of frustrating because they're starting to do more things. It's kind of nice. McMahon, very anti things like drones, anti using all kinds of stuff. It was, and so there was a lot of good things they're doing now to do that. So now we have our strategic plan, and then after we have our strategic plan, we start looking at what are the different operational things? What are the things we're doing currently now? Strategic, once again, usually long-term. It's the things we're going to do in the next 3 to 5 years or try to achieve. Things like implementing drones into a system would be something, you long-term. You don't just start putting those out, but you start looking at the operations. What are the things day to day that we can do to help, the people in the jails, people at dispatch, people at, on the streets? How do you help them do their job better, faster, smarter? The operational aspects of it. All right, so kind of go into a little more depth on what some of these things contain. The strategic plan, there's a lot of redundancy on these things. It must be in alignment with the organization. Once again, I've certainly already beat that to death, kicked that horse to death. Must provide an architecture at seamlessly. This is where you start defining, you put your strategic plan, talk about this thing called the architecture, what's in there, what are the things you're gonna do? And you look at specifically more things like, what is it in that, in your architecture, your network? Well, currently our network doesn't, and that was one of the things I found when I first got into the sheriff's department. Our network, what they had, very, very, very slow. 10 megabit lines into places, which is by today, those of you are numbers kind of people, very, very slow. We had very bad throughput. So in some cases we had to decentralize because if we brought it into headquarters, into downtown, things were gonna come to a screeching halt, or it would take a long time for responses. And as you can well imagine, things like dispatch, if you're working, dispatch is everybody, right? Dispatch at that place, 911, what's the nature of your emergency? They need to be able to do things very quickly, because it's very high stress, kind of very emergent kind of things. And anybody ever think they want to be a dispatcher? It's a hard job. It's a really hard job. People are calling in, especially, there's two different parts to dispatch. So one is the phones, it's where people call in, that's their answer the phone, 911, emergency. And my kids, you get all kinds of stuff, and people are crazy because there's something's scary happening, especially like a kid or something. And then there's the other half of it's radio. That all gets entered into the systems, the dispatch system, and then that goes to the people who are actually on the radios talking to the people on the streets. Hey, we got a person call. They're telling a person, get out, go do these things. Two different people. The one person is just trying to get information from them, and then they're putting it into the system, and then another person sees that stuff as they're putting it in and could relay it out. Makes it more quick. But it's very, very high stress kind of things, especially intake. I've gone to the dispatch and spent, a day or two, just put headphones on and listen to them do that job. Very, very stressful, hard job. People get burnt out on that pretty bad. But that's the kind of stuff you need to know. I needed to understand. That's why I go do it. I need to understand that, what kind of turnaround, what kind of things they're doing. I really enjoyed that stuff. Actually, I'm sorry, I know I get too much time, but next week I'm actually going Thursday. Ran into all my old buddies. I'm going up in the helicopter again next week. They said, let's do it, man. So that'll be fun. I think it's actually Monday night. So if I come in Tuesday morning dragging, just because I was out late up in the air the night before. So anyway. And then it must efficiently allocate development. One of the things we have to look at too is, I would love to say that I had all the money on the planet. They'd give me, but the reality is, as I had to look and see, okay, they're giving us this much money to do certain things. I can only do certain, I gotta allocate based on what I need for dispatch, patrol, all these different areas. You have to figure out, how do you balance? Because, it's easy to say. That's one thing, I find kind of difficult is sometimes in academia, we like to tell people, oh, you should always do things like this, build this kind of security, build this kind of have the fastest network on the planet, have, all these. But the reality is, especially in public sector stuff, they don't throw money at you. It's like, okay, we have this much money, we have scarce money, resources, this money thing. Do what you can with this. And I got to say, okay, what's going to break first, or what are my priorities based on what I understand of the organization? And you have to figure out how to allocate things based on the needs of the organization as you get it. The next thing is an IT steering committee. A lot of times you have a steering committee, and it's another opportunity to get input from people. I've been in organizations where the IT steering committee is usually a whole bunch of IT people, and there's like maybe one or two members from the executive staff or some higher level. I would emphasize, if you have an IT steering committee, which their purpose is to make sure and understand the needs of the organization, if that's what you're doing, get a cross section of the organization, because what ends up happening, and this is once again, I've been burned by this several times, whereas you get a bunch of IT people in the room with one or two people that understand the organization, and that person from the organization, let's say he's an accounting manager. What's he going to be telling you we need the most? You're going to need accounting stuff. HR guy is going to be in there. They need HR stuff. You need to have a cross section of people, because the organization has different needs, and people will not necessarily represent other places very well. And then the IT people were just like, hey, let's just do some really cool IT stuff. It's fun to do IT, and there's some neat whiz bang technology. So let's do that with neat whiz bang technology. Oh yeah. A lot of times and what ends up happening is we start using, we find this neat, crazy, fun technology. And then we have a solution, right? We have this technology. We're trying to find the problem for it so we can use it in the organization. So you understand that? You have a solution. This is fun technology. Hey, maybe something like 3D printing. Hey, 3D printing. I think 3D printing will be fun. I don't know if anybody's ever used a 3D printer. I've toyed with the idea of buying one and kind of messing with it, but I don't really have a need for it at my house, especially. And at work, we really didn't have a need either. But that's one of those things I just think it'd be fun to play with. And so you start looking into that, and turns out it doesn't really have a need. You have a solution to, and you're trying to find the problem that's the meeting. All right, so you now jump down into the operational plan. An operational plan usually has these things contained within it. The first thing is the mission statement. Once again, reiterating that mission. Our mission this is the IS operational plan. Our mission is to provide the best technology, make sure all our people can do all the flower things, once again. So in the next area for your operation plan, we'll describe what is that IS environment or infrastructure that I talked about. Where do we have our servers? How do we have them, and those kinds of things set up and talk about that environment. And then the next area is the objectives. Okay, based on our mission statement, based on how our environment is set up, what is it, or how is it that, what are my objectives? What am I trying to achieve? And in some cases, you might, it's the things that I kind of mentioned. One of our objectives is, wow, we got this, we have really slow network in this area. And so we're starving out some of the staff in that area. So one of my objectives is to find money, to find a way to increase bandwidth, to make it so it's easier. So that's your objectives. What are you trying to do operationally, and maybe even strategically, to meet the needs, to better meet the needs of the organization? The next one of my favorite sections, constraints. Constraints within the IS or IT. Constraints is like I don't know. It's one of my favorites because I call it the excuse area. Well, I'm going to do all these great things in my objectives. I'm going to increase the bandwidth, and I'm going to do all these things. And to some degree in your constraints, that's where you say, well, one of the constraints I have is I don't have enough money. I don't have enough. I don't have any smart people that know how to do certain things. That's where you can kind of say these are the constraints, and these are the things that are going to get in my way of me being able to achieve that. And it's also some of them are actually very legitimate, though. I mean, if you have some really high tech thing that you're doing, a constraint could be, it's going to be hard for me to find a smart guy or a smart person to be able to do this for us. So we either need to find somebody or maybe get a consultant or something. So that might be in your constraints as well. And then the next thing, the application portfolio. What are all the different projects or things that you have going on within the organization? And it could be fairly straightforward. As it turns out, I'm using the sheriff's department as a lot of examples today. The sheriff's department has a lot of applications going on within it. There are a lot of different, you got some of the big things, the biggest ones are the dispatch, patrol, jail. Those are probably the three biggest. In our records management system, they keep a lot of records. But then there's all kinds of other things. You have internal affairs. Internal affairs, they're the ones that if somebody does something stupid, that they, like you see on TV, somebody got caught with video, they get reported to internal affairs. If you call up and say, hey, this cop was rude to me, that gets turned into internal affairs. They investigate all those things. And so they have their own special application to track and all those kinds of things as they're going on. And it's held, that thing is very secure because it's personnel related. If you're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, you do have some protected rights on that. And one of the things we're doing, and I don't know if I mentioned this, one of the things, I don't know if they're still doing it or not. It might, hopefully it hadn't fallen through. One of the things that I had started while I was there is we started looking at called it PHI, Personal History Index, and that was, we were working somewhat with the internal affairs guys. We kind of feel, you know, I'm straight up on, you know, the stuff you see on TV and, or, you know, the videos that people are, and the things that have done. We have, you know, we do know, and within the law enforcement world, I mean, we all believe that there are probably indicators that somebody's going a little rogue or getting a little out of control. And that's the kind of stuff we were looking at. We think that there's different things. Anytime an officer draws his gun, anytime he hits somebody, anything, you're supposed to write a report for you know, I can't think what the name of it is now. Jeez. There's a specific report you write, but anyway, you have to report all that. And so one of the things we want to look at is how many of these do they have in a certain period of time? How many complaints do they have from citizens? How many times have they crashed their car? And we take all that stuff, and that's what we're calling the PHI, the Personal History Index. And there's, you know, we think when things were due, we were trying to look at it statistically. If somebody gets to the point where they're having use of force, is what I was thinking of. You pull your gun, you hit somebody, that's called all use of force. If they have so many uses of force within 6 months, let's say, we never, when I was there, we never came up with the statistics on it. But if they have this many uses of force within 6 months, if they have this many accidents within certain periods of time, take all that stuff together and all of a sudden pop that to the top and say, oh, okay, this guy's running a little on the hot side. Maybe we should bring him in. We got to talk to him, figure out what's going on. Maybe he needs some training, maybe. And that's what we were trying to do proactively to see if we can try to identify somebody who's on the verge of doing something stupid and get on somebody's, you know, phone or somebody on something like that. I think they're still doing that. I thought it's a hard program to do, because coming up with those statistics on what makes sense is very complicated and difficult. Things like the jails have use of force all the time. You know, people, I'm not going back in my cell. You know, they forcibly throw them back into the cell. Well, guess what? Use of force, 2-3 guys, boom, and that happens a lot. So, is it the same if you're working in the jails? Is it the same if you're working on the street? So those kinds of things. But anyway, those are the all of those different programs. Homicide had their own program, all these different pieces, lots and lots of within our portfolio. And that's one of the things as an IT manager, they're all like, hey, we need a new program application for homicide. Yes, lines over there, that kind of stuff. And it was really hard because there's just a lot that they're in their portfolio. And the last thing, resource allocation and project management. A lot of these things as the IT manager, I wish I had plenty of people to do all these things, but you're kind of always okay, you know, you're going to work 4 different of these programs. You need to know, and so you're trying to allocate your resources to cover everything sufficiently. All right, enough of that one. All right, so what do we have to do next? Chart. One of the things some of this important stuff to do. One of the things we have to do, because like I said, all these resources, all that money is precious and short. We don't have plenty of money to do all the things we need a lot of time. So we have to assess the costs of what are these things going to cost. And this is another one of those things. I think, you know, I'm guessing that you're going to someday be a manager, supervisor, leader, whatever you want to call yourself in an organization. This one's real important to me. As the IT manager, a lot of times I get people coming to me and saying, we want, you know, let's say internal affairs comes to me and says, we want to buy a new, and they did while I was there. We want to buy a new program. There's this program out there that a lot of other agencies are using, and it's really good. It runs really well. And a lot of times what they, you know, they'll say, yeah, they only spent $50,000 on this application. So that's what they tell you. Then, you know, and in a large organization like the Sheriff's Department, they got 4,500 employees. There's a lot of people, a lot of computers, a lot of moving parts. You think, $50,000, that's nothing. That's cheap compared to some of these the jail program is probably $3-4 million to buy a jail program. But so then you start looking at that. But the reality is the assessing the costs. You got to look at all the costs. A lot of times when somebody comes to you, one of the user, you know, people, a lot of times what they tell you, they know that cost of the program itself, but there's this thing, I don't know if you ever heard the term TCO, total cost of ownership. A lot of times, you know, there's other things. Okay, yeah, the license to buy the program is $50,000. Oh yeah, but wait, we have to buy a server. It has to live on its own server because it's special applications. Oh, okay, now we need money for equipment. Oh, and now we also need, it takes, one person full-time to run this thing. Because there's a lot of updates or, whatever. There's some, people kind of based. So you got money, you got bodies that you have to, ongoing costs. And so all those things, that's why the total, you need to look at the total cost of ownership, not just what the licensing are. And users, people who are not IT folk, will a lot of times come to you with that just licensing. Oh, it's only $50,000. That's nothing. But things like staff that are ongoing costs, very, very expensive. And I've been bit by that. When I was in my early days, I didn't realize that either. I would, go put together a presentation or a proposal to my management, and you go and they allocate the $50,000 or $60,000, and then you start running. Oh shoot, this is taking. I got a body. I had to buy some equipment. I have a body I had to allocate to this. Now they can't do some other things. I need more money for more staff. And then you go back and say, and you just find there go, why didn't you tell us that when you first bought this? Because now my experience with senior management is when you go back to the trough, as I would always call it. You go to the trough and you say, I need money for this, I need to, so I can do this. And then if you have to go back to the trough because I didn't know I also need this, they go, what do you look like a knucklehead. So that's why total cost of ownership, assess the cost and understand what all is behind that. Assessing the benefits that, maybe assessing the benefits, looking at, okay, this is how much it's going to cost us, but also what's it going to do for us? How, what kind of things? And and for assessing the benefits, there's all kinds of different types of benefits. It could be just directly profitability. If we buy this, we're going to be more profitable. It's going to make X more dollars. That's one of the easier ones. But there could be some things that are, just going to make our people more efficient. Going to give us better customer service, right? That's a little intangible. What is that? How do you measure and look at that? But that might be important. So you look at all the benefits and you try to put together and figure what that is. And then the last thing you do is this thing called, the cost benefit analysis. You compare those things, and hopefully, if you've done a good job at looking, got all the costs, you got all the benefits, then you can put together a presentation saying, okay, this is what's going to cost us, but look what it's going to do for us organizationally. And I've had to do that several times when I'm trying to justify or, an application. A lot of times, like in something with the sheriff's department, internal affairs, we were buying that internal affairs program. Look at the internal affairs stuff. You have somebody champion it too. The captain of internal affairs is like, I don't have to go in there alone. I got a guy, in this case, a guy with a gun on his head, he's going to help me defend why they really need it. But nonetheless, you need to cost justify and make sure there is a benefit to it. And in some cases, interesting enough, the ones that are kind of, I think are more difficult anyway for me, is when the biggest benefit is customer, there's some intangible thing like customer service or your customer satisfaction will be higher for it. And, you get some people like, I don't care about that. I want the bottom line. I want to be more profitable, especially in private industry. And so that one can be a little tougher depending on what the basis of your analysis are. All right, moving right along. So some of the different ways we do this, change my chart here. Net present value or NPV. Those of you who've had you finance class, right? Finance, remember NPV. And I am not an expert in finance. Investment stuff I can help you with, but not investment, not NPVs and all these calculation stuff. Basically, it's figuring out the ratio. They actually look at the future value of and the benefit to it versus what is currently amount. To be honest with you, I have never had anybody ask me to do this to cost justify, but the book does list it as a methodology. The next one, return on investment. Return on investment, usually stated in a percentage, right? You figure out what it's going to net to you based on your benefits, and you calculate a ratio saying the return on this investment is 7%. We're going to spend this money, and the result of that is going to be 7% increase in profitability or something based on some statistic. And then there's the other one that's looked at a lot. And that's kind of usually, it's a lot of times I think the kind of the rule of thumb on return on investment Needs to be in the, at least, the 4 or 5% kind of range to be worth looking at in a lot of organizations. And that's gonna be, don't use that as an absolute. That's, most organizations, man, if it gives you a 2% increase, 2% ROI, they might be good, happy with it. So it just depends. The next one, break even analysis, very similar. You're trying to figure out, okay, you're looking at how much the cost is gonna be, how much, money it's gonna bring in, revenue of it. But you're looking at, okay, we're gonna spend this amount of money. And then we're gonna make money. Hopefully it's not gonna draw down money. You're gonna make money on it. How long is it before it's going to, we're gonna recoup those costs to do it? So the ROI is usually a percentage, and the break even analysis is timeline, is how long it's gonna take. And usually, and of course, in the ROI, you want a higher percentage, right? You want a higher percentage return, and break even, you want a lower time. If you can, I think the kind of standard is 5-year break even kind of point. If you can break even on your investment on a new application or new equipment or something, that's usually a decent amount of time. But the break even analysis, how long is it going to take? Bless you. And on the last one, the business case. And a lot of times, the business case is usually, and very much so, this is what I've had to do many times. I have to go in and put together a presentation for them. And a lot of times you do a lot of these kinds of things. You talk about, what's the ROI, what's the break even, what are those things for, what kind of benefits are we going to get from it, and going through, and you present a business case based on that. Very typical stuff. All right, so now we're gonna move into a little bit more on move off of the background and some of that, the management kind of stuff. Now, okay, we've done all those things. We've decided we are gonna do this. And this is this chart is looking at what are the different strategies or ways that we can acquire new applications. Several different ways to do this. First thing is purchase a brand new pre-written application. That is, you go buy it. You buy it off the shelf. And the first one kind of assumes the what we call the off the shelf kind of implementation. I think we talked about that already. Off the shelf, we talked when we were talking about ERP kind of systems. The off the shelf, I think they called it. This is one of those ones I can tell. This chapter was written by somebody different than the person who wrote the ERP chapter, because they use very different terminology for the same stuff. So I'm like, but I shouldn't criticize. I have not written my own book. I could sit here and say I'd write a better book, but no, I won't. Never happen. But nonetheless, purchase a pre-written application. That is, I buy it, and usually in this case, what they're implying is off the shelf. I just take it. We load it onto a server or whatever kind of platform it's going to sit on, and we bring it up. It does its thing. It runs, and we just use it as it is out of the box, as a lot of times we call it. Versus the second one is you buy that pre-written software, somebody wrote it, and now we say, okay, I'm going to customize it, because it doesn't really, the accounting program, it doesn't really do the things the way we do business. So I need to change the way it works. So I'm going to modify it, and customize it to meet our needs. And that's very typically, I think we talked about our ERPs, very typically a lot of organizations do that. I've very seldom used something straight out of the box. It's usually there's some weird things or some customization that needs to be done in order to meet your needs. The only application I can say that I've ever truly used out of the box would be like Microsoft Office suite. Nobody modifies Office. It's always usually works straight out of the box to do what you need. But that would be a straight out of the box kind of implementation. The next one, you can lease an application. That is, just like leasing a car, you have it and you can use it, and there's some charges based on that. Once again, this is one of those things I've never got involved with. I've never leased applications. We've always purchased a license and then operate doing it that way. All right, so then the next one, application service providers, software as a service. Once again, software as a service. It's very similar to what we talked about in the ERP section, running it in the cloud. You don't, in a very traditional, what we call on-prem or on-premise kind of methodology, you buy the application, you have your own servers, and you load it onto your service, you run it from your environment, within your systems. Software as a service is very different. You are now just like if you have cloud storage, if you're familiar with cloud storage, everything is out there. You're saving your stuff into this thing called the cloud. And so then, it's out somewhere remote, not on your own equipment. Same thing is your software is running somewhere else. It's going through the network, running out there and bringing results back to you based on the operations of the program. And there's lots of pluses and minuses about doing that. Most of the stuff, my experience has mostly been running on-prem. We run our own software, and especially in law enforcement, we have issues with if there's network outage or if there's stuff, we just can't afford to let that happen. And some of the downsides that with software as a service, one of the things I worked for the elected sheriff. There's to some degree, I think management to some degree likes to be able to, if systems aren't running, it's nice to be able to reach out and grab the neck of the guy, the IT manager, versus having to call a company where, hey, you're running AWS, Amazon Web Services. Who are you going to call then? Or are you calling, Azure? You're running something in the cloud with Microsoft. You're going to call, no, you're not going to call them. They like to be able to say, hey, you need to get that stuff running now, Mark. It's now. So, like I said, they don't literally. I have had calls at 2 o'clock in the morning and they're pretty excited. Like, what's going on? Yeah. But I've never had them where I felt like they were going to reach out and choke me up, or something. They're pretty upset though, usually. Then the next one, use open source. We talked about open source. Open source is software or stuff that's available, shareware, freeware out there. Once again, very, very viable and more. A lot of good stuff out there. When open source first started peeking its head out, very, very kind of sketchy kind of stuff. People weren't using open source, or you had to be really careful with it. But there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of developers who are putting, they put a lot of effort into what they're doing. They take a lot of pride in their development. And so there is a lot of good stuff out there. And the downside is you have to be careful, buyer beware. If it's free, you get what you pay for kind of thing. And so the code may not run the way you need to, or maybe, weird or do some strange stuff. So you buyer beware. In the world I've worked in some of the engineering stuff and with law enforcement, we had to be very, very careful. If we're going to use open source, we had to make sure it actually does the things we want. There's nothing hidden in there. There's no bad things. And it performs exactly as we need it to. I had one guy, I may have mentioned this, developer he was like, Mark, can I use some open source stuff in this? I know we were kind of, sensitive about that. He was a very thorough developer, very, very, very good programmer. And he would bring the stuff in and test the heck out of it. And so I trusted him. I'm like, you're in, man, go for it. Because I knew he would test it out and make sure. And that's what you got to do. If your stuff is sensitive, or by like some of the law enforcement stuff is, you have to make sure the open source stuff is safe and works within your domain. Outsourcing is when you decide, okay, we don't have the resource. I don't have the programming team to do this, or I do have a programming team, but it's going to take all of them to do this. It's going to take all my resources. So then you decide, okay, I'm going to outsource this to somebody else. Outsourcing to not necessarily doesn't have to be just development of applications. I think I may have mentioned one of the things I've outsourced in the past. This is when I was in the assessor's office. We were going to redo all of our network drops into the rooms, into our different offices, because there weren't enough. And then we were having reliability issues. And so we wanted to go through, there's 3 floors, lots and lots of different, we had 300-400 employees. So one of the things we decided to do is, our guys, we can wire this, and I was against that. And I think some of the guys in front mad at me or whatever, but terminating, like I said, you terminate a cable, it's not that hard. It's pretty easy actually. But when you're doing a lot and you're doing them fast, you better be good at it, because I've seen so many times, and I've done this myself, for my own home stuff, I'll get a wire, I'll get the little end, that's when we terminate, when you put the end, the little plug on it, that's called terminating it. When you terminate that, if you don't do it right and you know, you plug things in and like, what? My network's not working, this thing's not working. And that can be very problematic. So my decision to outsource it is hire up people that's all they do. They do it fast, they do it they're very good at it. Rather than my guys who, they do it once in a while, they may make mistakes. And the last thing I want to do is be chasing, wires that aren't working or whatever. So that's why it's very, sometimes you make decisions like that to outsource as well. And then the last one, employee custom development. You have some special application and you want to just write it totally new, because it's not available perhaps, or you just have your customization needs would be so great to buy something off the shelf and customize it would just make the program totally different. So sometimes you want to do custom development. When I started out, there wasn't a lot out there. I was a developer. I mean, it was the wild, wild west, man. It was back in the 80s, 90s. There wasn't a lot of stuff out there. So a lot of stuff we had to do custom, I don't know, make myself sound old, huh? So we did a lot of our own original development. All right, what do we got next? We're getting close to where I'm gonna stop. All right, so next. All right, so software as a service. This is just kind of I talked a little bit about this. This is running things in the cloud. This is kind of a good diagram if I didn't explain it very well. You have your application and this big bubble here would be the whole cloud. That's everything that's in this cloud environment. And so I just thought, I gotta find this picture. I had a picture when I used to, back in, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, we went up to Microsoft to talk to them. And, Microsoft has their Azure cloud. And we were up there and there was this big sign and it said Microsoft Cloud or something. And it was funny because it was actually, it was just like they put it on the side of a dumpster. And so it was actually, and so I used to joke about, because everybody was like, well, where is the cloud? Or what is this thing? What is the cloud? And so I had and when I was up in Microsoft and they had this Microsoft, it was just a dumpster, it was a big trash can. And it said on there's advertisement stuff. But I said, I used to joke that, yeah, this is the cloud right here. It's a big dumpster. Anyway, I thought it was funny. I don't know. And so anyway, but you're running things up in the cloud. And so as you can see, everything's running. And what this is showing is, so this is where that cloud is actually physically running. And so you have your application here and you will have databases with all kinds of different customers. But then, your customers are coming in, those dotted lines, the lines that are going up outside of that thing are the different customers that are coming into and working with that application. But the application itself is actually running in that cloud and it's talking through networks to the different customers. That way. One of the things with usually like software as a service, one of the things like, I talk about customization, when they're running in the cloud like this, they don't like these software as a service kind of things. They don't like to modify those too much or customize them. So your chances of customizing in the cloud are much smaller because it becomes more difficult for them to manage those environments. All right, so what's next? All right, I think I might go over this chart and this is kind of what the remainder of the chapter is going to go over. So I'm just going to I might go through this one fairly quickly and then pick up the next time after this. So like I said, let's say we decide we're going to build it and we're going to write our own, application, or we're going to hire somebody, we're going to outsource a development of this, of an application. So this is the actual process that you kind of go through. And once again, this is what my early years, this is what I did. I lived this stuff for several years when I was doing defense work. And then somewhat into my technology stuff when I was doing project management. So the software development lifecycle kind of, it's been around a long time, tried and true. It's also kind of typically called the waterfall approach, if you've heard that in maybe another class. And basically the way it is you start out and the first thing is, and we're going to go through this in much more detail than the next few charts, systems investigation. A lot of in an investigation is when you start looking at it and say, okay, what is it that we want to do here? we look at the cost benefit analysis, we look at the different, the physical things of it. Is the technology actually there? Feasibility study kind of stuff. And is it feasible to actually do that? And then once you get done with the feasibility and say, yeah, this is something we can do, we have the money, we can, and it's doable. You do the analysis, and this is kind of going back to that little cartoon I had at the beginning. Now we do the analysis. Now we have somebody, okay, find out what is it exactly that you want this to do. Ask a lot of questions and get the definition of that swing thing that I showed at the beginning. So what is this thing? What is it actually that we need to build? And then the next phase, this thing called design. The design is, okay, now at least we think we understand what it is they need. We've done all our analysis. We think we understand the requirements of the business needs. And so now we have to design it. How are we gonna, how do we go about building this? And do we need hardware? What kind of software, or how is it built? Those kinds of things. So now we designed it, and then we turn it loose to our programmers, our coders. I think there's a lot of more popular term nowadays. Start writing code and build this thing out. You maybe use, you go out and find open source kind of stuff, and you download it, you test it, and you start this thing called testing. And I'm going to go into each one of these phases in the next time. But so you program, and then you start testing. Obviously, you want to do, if you're a good shop and you do really good development, you do exhaustive testing, because you don't want to just turn it loose without, when it doesn't run that well. And those, I don't know if you ever had experience with people who don't do good testing. Some of the applications we've bought vendors, and they say, oh yeah, it's good here. They turn it loose, start playing with this. And you can tell they have not done their side of the testing, and it just is a disaster. It doesn't do anything right. It crashes left and right. Nothing more frustrating than that. And then the next phase, the implementation. Okay, we've done all these things. We've tested the heck out of it. It works well. And now we implement it. We put it out for the users to start doing their thing. All kinds of different terms. You put it into production. You go live. So those are all different terms. You're putting it into the environment that it's intended, or the reason you bought it. And then the last thing, and the operation and maintenance. Now it's just going, just doing things. And then you have this maintenance phase. Maintenance is, there's things that come along that happen, and we have to change. Maybe there's a bug in the code. Maybe there's those are your cybersecurity tech. Maybe there's some kind of vulnerability in there that we discovered that we didn't know when we first wrote it. We got to change and patch that. So there's different things. Maybe there's regulatory stuff. When I was in the assessor's office, the assessor values property for the purposes of taxation. One of the things they would do is the laws change. So the way they value a property, we'd have to go in and change it, or the program, to meet for the new laws, different things like that. So that was all part of the operations and the maintenance of your application. So the next few charts are the rest of the remainder of the charts. I'm going to go over. I'm going to do that on Thursday. I'm home again. And I'm going to go into a lot more detail on all these things. So that's the gripping stuff on that. Any questions on this? Once again, groups 3 and 4, make sure you turn yours in by midnight tomorrow. And I don't know if anybody, group 1 or 2, I have to go look back again. I don't, maybe it was the other class. There was one of the groups, like I said at the beginning, one group, their video uploaded, got flagged somehow by YouTube. So I couldn't view it. I don't know what that was. It's always fascinating or interesting. So it was the other section actually. But nonetheless, make sure 3 and 4 you got yours in. I started watching a little bit of the group 1 and 2 for both classes. I haven't finished doing that. And I probably haven't. I don't normally post the grades on the technology project till the end, for lots of various reasons. Probably the main reason I don't do it is I think I may have mentioned that I let you get to evaluate your group performance, and I usually do that around the week of the final. And I don't want to post grades and then all of a sudden it's a group grade for the most part. And so I don't want to post the grade and then all of a sudden I find out, there's one deadbeat in the group and I'm going to dog their grade a little bit and I change the grade. I like to just post it once. So when I have all the information. And I don't do that usually. Actually, I'll probably do it the day of the final, or actually physically give you a piece of paper and tell you, go ahead and write down, evaluate it. That's why I get better input that way. A lot of time, I've tried doing that by saying, here, I'll email this form back to me and I'll get 5. You know, or something. I don't get enough that I can say, I feel comfortable doing this. So it's kind of like SOTIs too. I don't know. We should do SOTIs in class, right? Is that still open?
Should be closed yesterday. Right?
Did it?
On Monday?
I don't know. Did it?
Yeah. I think
Close
I'm
yesterday? I think so, yeah, I know there's a window of time. We used to do SOTIs in the classroom all the time. There was no online doing them. It was like, okay, today we're doing them, and I had to leave the room because you can't be in there and bias it and everything. So I'd leave the room and then somebody, when I had to have a student collect them. And when we did that, you'd get probably 70% return rate of them. Because, you know, people came to class more than 2. So you give a higher percentage, and it's statistically sound. Then you can say, okay, we had 70% of the class, so you can say that this is a good evaluation. Now, any guesses on how many people do their SOTIs?
When the professor offers extra credit.
Oh, when they offer extra credit, do they really?
For one of my classes, systems and design analysis, the professor was offering extra credit.
To do it? No
Yeah,
kidding.
to do it.
Wow,
So
I'm not gonna do that. It's not that important to me. Nobody knows. I just. Maybe if they're all bad, they'll fire me and I'll put me on my pencil guy. Not kidding. Yeah, but you should do it, but statistically, I usually maybe 25-30% of students actually do it, so I probably should. I mean, it's helpful feedback. So. Anyway. I should say something, I'll get myself in trouble. All right, well, have a good one. I'm done. Shut up the recording, so. What's that? It's fine. Yeah. Oh, this is the thing about the SOTI.